Welcome to the planning board meeting, Monday, February 24th, starting at 6:01 p.m. Administrative first item on the agenda is administrative items. We've got minutes for February. Yeah, there we are. Okay.
Can I run through for 2 seconds?
Shoot.
Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and the board members, this meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting will do so using the Zoom information provided.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay, now we have minutes for February 10th to approve. Does anybody have any any changes?
I move that the February 10th minutes be approved as drafted.
Let's ask for a second.
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? I do have one edit, I think, Emily, on the vote for, what was, when you had one vote for Mary in the last meeting?
Yep.
Which one was that? It was for historical. Notice to say aye for Wayne, or did it say nay? I'll go with that, just double check. Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that addition, that edit, do we have any other edits for the minutes? No, if not, we'll do we don't need to roll for that. Yes.
Technically it's required.
Technically, okay. All right, we'll do a roll
Not
call.
required once the board members,
That's what I thought. That's the way we've been doing it.
but it doesn't matter.
Stick with what we've been doing. All right, so since we're not, we don't have a member on Zoom, we'll just call for roll, voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes for February 10th with the one edit, say aye.
Aye.
Any names? Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, thanks, Emily. All right, next up is the continued public hearing for 32 Surplus Street. Our Vice Chair, William Dennison, is going to lead that.
All right, folks, this is the continued public hearing vote, the 32 Surplus Street. The last time we were here, my recollection was that there was some back and forth with Pat Brennan, who I think is on the wall. And so unless the applicant thinks that need to talk first, I'd be inclined to hear from Mr. Brennan.
I think that's the way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So they did submit revised plans a couple weeks ago. I sent the letter to the board last week about those revised plans, and basically they had addressed my comments. Just a couple of notes that I would make. First off, I had recommended in my comments that the road be private in perpetuity, and if the board approves the project, I just suggest that be a condition of approval. There was some discussion with the water department. I didn't. The water supervisor brought it up in the design review team meeting that he wanted a water main in the roadway rather than individual services to each of the houses from Surplus Street, and they made that change to comply with what the water superintendent wanted. But in the design review team meeting, the water and superintendent, said that the water main would be private and the hydrant would be private and privately maintained, and that's usually not the case. Right in the back of the subdivision regulations, there's an easement form. It's actually in Appendix E, and it's conveyance of easements and utilities. And one of the utilities that gets conveyed back to the town through an easement is the water main. and this has been standard practice for as long as I can remember. And I know, for instance, the village at Duxbury, that's a large private property, but all those water mains and hydrants are owned and maintained by the town. So it's my belief that this water main would be as well. So I just wanted to put that out there just so that people were aware of that. And then the only other comment I had on the revised plans was the drain pipe sizes. They had some 10-inch pipe. They specified everything to be reinforced concrete, but reinforced concrete, I believe they only make down as small as 12-inch. So anything that they have proposed is 10-inch. They're probably gonna have to specify a high density polyethylene, which is a plastic pipe, which is allowed by the regulations, the subdivision regulations. So I don't see that as an issue. It's just something that I wanted to point out to the applicant and the board. And other than that, like I said, they addressed everything else, so I'm happy with what they've provided. But I'd be happy to answer any questions should anybody have any.
So Pat, are the waivers requested?
Yes, they are requesting 4 waivers. The waivers that they're requesting, and I'll just run through, if you just give me a second here. One of them is the width of the Cape Cod berm, and this was something that I had recommended. They went to a 12-inch Cape Cod berm instead of the 18-inch that's specified in the rules and regulations. And this has come up in many other towns in recent years, and the reason why I recommend that they go with the 12-inch is that most of the pavers don't have the attachments to construct the 18-inch wide Cape Cod berm. So what we've typically done is we've asked them to make the travel lanes an extra 6 inches wider. So the overall back of Cape Cod berm to back of Cape Cod berm, the overall width of the paved roadway is still the same. It's just that the Cape Cod berm is only 12 inches wide rather than 18 inches wide. So that was one of the waivers. Another waiver. Just trying to. They've requested a waiver from providing rational method pipe sizing calculations. There's only a couple of drain pipes on this project, and I don't see the need for rational method pipe sizing calculations on this. They did provide calculations through a different method through their HydroCAD analysis, which showed that the pipe sizes were sufficient. So I don't have an issue with that that request either. The other waiver, one of the other waivers is a 50-foot buffer of existing vegetation between all basins or pretreatment facilities and adjacent uses or structures. The buffer, they will be providing a 50-foot setback, but it won't be naturally vegetated due to the grading and so forth that's required. On a lot of the subdivisions, or in some subdivisions, this has been requested previously because it's difficult to provide that. Basically, what this does, it makes you have a basin out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and they just don't have, with the way that the property is laid out, they're putting the basin in the natural low point, which is where it should be located, and that's kind of centrally located on the lot. So they do need to do some clearing around that. So that waiver would be required for that. And then the last waiver is about the drainage piping, which I had mentioned. The requirement is that 12 inches to be the minimum size with a minimum depth of cover of 2.5 feet. Like I said, they do have some 10-inch pipe proposed, which would again be most likely the high density polyethylene. And it's got a little bit less than 2 feet of cover, but it's not subject to traffic bearing loads at those locations. And I would also note that the high density polyethylene pipe is rated for only 1 foot of cover. So that's really not a big deal from an engineering point of view, that waiver either. So those are the 4 waivers that they were requesting.
Thank you. Let's hear from the applicant.
Sure, so I think that's pretty accurate. I think Scott can take us through the plan if the board desires, but I think it's pretty straightforward. I think the remaining issue we have is the water department had requested the 6-inch water main and the hydrant. We think for 3 lots, that's kind of excessive. There is a hydrant 350 feet away on Surplus Street. And it's a significant expense to have a 6-inch main. And there obviously is some confusion about whether or not this will remain private or public. Your regulations call for an easement for the water line, which we're prepared to give, but I think the water department also wanted this to remain private, and we were gonna put that in the HOA, so I think we need direction from the board on that. But we would also request relief. We don't really know how to phrase it as a waiver, Mr. Chair, because we didn't see that as a requirement. I think I cited in my last letter, there was a project on Franklin Street where a 1-inch line was permitted, so that was a similar subdivision, and we think that that would be sufficient here.
Okay. So there are other people here. Anybody who would like to speak to this?
Yeah,
So in order to do this, just identify yourself and where you live.
FI and 98 Surface Street. I raised the issue of the water last time, more directed at capacity. We live just down the road from the pump house there. And the water pressure isn't that great to the point that I put in a booster pump for that reason. The water is becoming more a commodity these days. So the question really I'm driving at is, will this development affect in any way the water supply to the existing residences, residents on Surplus Street? Obviously, you know, the 3 houses there, but down the other side of us was Nash Road, where there are big houses put in. Is there any issue with the water supply and the pressure that we should be seeing in the product?
So I think that's an appropriate question to ask the applicants, so I'm going to just pass it along.
Okay, Scott, would you be kind enough to address that?
Sure, yeah, so the project has been reviewed by all the department heads, including the water department. And the development of 3 single-family houses is normal for this area, so we don't expect any change in the water pressure.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to weigh in here? Have a view? Yes, sir.
Yes, John Haggerty, 47 Surplus Street. I was wondering if there's been any consideration of preserving some of the tree growth on the lot, because it has been common, particularly in the last 2 years, when developments of this size within 2 miles of Surplus Street were done. The first act of the builder was to cut every tree down. And we respectfully request that we are willing to move our mailbox, for example, and I think, Mr. Dennison, we sent you a note on this, because it is in everybody's interest. The community, the natural wildlife, that a road like the one you're planning be located in such a way that it has minimal impact to the existing old growth trees and vegetation that exists. So that I'm just asking if there's been any discussion about that.
So what's the plan on tree clearing?
The plan is to, preserve any trees that we can. Obviously, we have to get in there to construct them.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite hear what you said, preserve.
The plan is to preserve as many trees as we can. Obviously, we have to get in there to construct the homes. But I think Mr. Dacey addressed it too, and obviously we would certainly make ourselves available to meet with the residents in the area and try to preserve as many trees as we can. I think it makes for a better project.
But you're not looking for any tree clearing permits?
We're not.
Yes, ma'am.
Susanna Tuffy, 58 Stetson Place. Maybe just a little bit of clarification. I love that you're willing to meet with us on this. I spoke at the last meeting. I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. And I've gone through my records and done some research since the last meeting, and I do have a lot of concerns. People have concerns about the trees, but for me, what that means is the wildlife that live in the undergrowth, the trees. And then Mr. Brennan said that they are looking for a waiver for a 50-foot buffer of vegetation that would not be natural because of the laying of the land. From my personal records, I do know that there are red-headed woodpeckers, eastern box turtle. We don't have total confirmation that the bald eagle lives right there, but we see him every day fishing and going back to those woods, and blue spotted salamander. So I don't know if it's possible, if you guys have done an environmental impact assessment, and if that was done by your company, or if there were government agencies involved, but I do have just strong concerns and want to make sure that we minimize the impact to the local wildlife, especially the species of concern. Thank you.
Let's put that to the applicant as to what environmental impact assessments have been done.
So just to back up, there was some discussion last meeting about possible land clearing restrictions. So we reviewed the bylaw, and that bylaw actually does not apply to subdivisions. And with respect to the 50-foot undisturbed buffer, there will be a 50-foot undisturbed buffer between the basin and the rear properties. The waiver that we're requesting is just for this area between the basin and these two houses. So this is the area that we're clearing. So it's just affecting the new properties, not affecting the ones to the rear.
All right, you've intrigued me as to why the bylaw does not apply to subdivisions.
I have it right here, I think. There's a list of exemptions, 611.5,
Yeah.
number 7. Construction of roadways, associated infrastructure, and related slope and view easements for subdivisions shown on a definitive plan approved and endorsed by the planning board in accordance with the Duxbury subdivision rules and regulations.
But that
So
relates to, I mean, on its face, it relates to roadways.
Correct.
It doesn't relate to lots.
It relates to the subdivision.
Okay, well, maybe we should move on from that.
Okay.
But maybe not.
Maybe not, yes, maybe not.
Are there other folks who would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, has there been, my name is Peggy Hernandez. I live at 98 Surplus. And I just want to know, I mean, what environmental assessments have you done? I mean, that would definitely go a long way to making me understand
Well,
what's at risk and what's could be lost here.
Ms. Hernandez, that was literally the question I had asked, and I'm not sure it was answered. So let's see if we can get an answer this time.
So if I can, we haven't really done any intensive environmental assessment. What we've done is under the bylaw, we've only asked for one waiver on the buffer, and it's for the retention pond. We are going to comply with all the regulations under the board, but we haven't been required. No, we haven't. Have we done any outside environmental? We'll work with the neighbors if they want to bring information to our attention. You know, we'll hear that, and we're going to try to preserve as many mature trees as possible.
That doesn't sound very reassuring.
Ma'am, would you like to?
Yeah, I'm Joy Mills, 26 Surplus. Yeah, I think everyone in this neighborhood is extremely concerned about the trees, the vegetation, the wildlife. It's paramount really to, to our neighborhood. And we would like to see some sort of environmental assessment done and shown to all the neighbors and reviewed with the neighbors.
So, Pat, the suggestion that somehow the bylaw in terms of tree clearing doesn't apply to 3 new lots. Is that your view on this?
No, the individual lot development for the 3 lots, if they go over that 30,000 square foot threshold, they would need to apply for that. If they stay under it, they don't need it.
Right.
We need to
But the
understand.
construction of the roadway and the drainage lot, I believe
Yeah.
are exempt.
Anybody else would like to weigh in here?
Can I ask
Yes,
a
sir.
question
Yes,
that's
sir.
somewhat related? Again, John Haggerty, 47 Circular Street. Has there been any definitive plan for the square footage of the 3 new buildings?
All right, you can answer, I'll put that to the applicant, but then I'm gonna answer it.
Scott.
Yeah, so,
Go ahead.
so to answer your question, what we're showing on this plan is conceptual. When these lots are developed, the developer will work with each individual owner and, you know, the footprints will be tweaked. What we show in this design is a fairly large, house, you know, and then we add in a factor of safety for the stormwater. So that's really how we come up with it. So to answer your question, there will be likely changes to the footprints.
So and I said I'd answer it, so I'm gonna answer it.
Yeah.
So the short answer is that they have to comply with the zoning code. And you can't get more than 15% lot coverage. There are setback requirements, and all of these separate lots now have to comply separately with the zoning code. And whether, quite frankly, I wouldn't expect them to have told us exactly what they're gonna build. But they're gonna have to build something consistent with what the zoning in Duxbury permits.
Well, I have a question, Peggy Hernandez, 98 Surface. So when you're saying zoning that Duxbury permits, is the permission equal across the town? It doesn't matter where it's built in the town?
Shockingly, yes. Irrespective of where it is in town, almost everything is zoned residential. And we have almost exactly the same rules for all residential building in town. That, in all candor, I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense, but that's exactly where we're at. If it's in the residential district, it is subject to the same rules, and 95% of the entire town are subject to that rule.
So there's no exemption for the historic or shipyard district?
Oh, no, those are different obligations that might apply.
Nothing related to size?
Right.
What about height?
30 feet to the midline of the roof.
Does that mean 2 stories, 3 stories? What does
It's
that mean?
usually about 2.5 stories.
That's the town's bylaw.
That's what it says. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be candid with you. I sit on the zoning board. It's 30 feet to the midline of the roof. It's the same everywhere. Yes, sir.
Jeff Hyde at 98 Steps again. Just to be clear, when there's 3 units here in this development, that's 30,000 square feet per
I think
unit.
you're right.
That's basically taking all the trees out. Right? I mean, that's what we're dealing with.
And at some fundamental level, we live in a town where you have to rely on the goodwill of your neighbors. And that's my view on it. I am candid about it, where if a developer who has a long history in town tells me that they're gonna be sensitive to these particular issues, I'm inclined to believe them, but that's just me.
I understand that, but the issue that is raised here is an environmental one. And from an impact standpoint, we're asking that that be addressed. That doesn't mean to say that you can say, fine, we're gonna stick to the zoning, because we already know what the zoning is, clearing all the trees. That's not answering our question.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, again, to the extent that there's an environmental issue that needs to be addressed, this is not the board.
Conservation Committee? How do we get onto the conservation?
You'll be, apply. And you suggest, and I'll candor, I'm not gonna give a whole bunch of advice other than to suggest that you can make it clear to the conservation committee that you think that this is a project that needs attention.
Well, I think that's a good point. Appreciate that.
Can I ask, what is gonna happen to the logs that are cut down?
Go ahead. We can put that to the applicants, but I suspect that they're gonna go away.
Well, I mean, are you making money on selling the logs that you're cutting down?
I'm 100% sure that that's not within our jurisdiction. They're entitled to make money.
Again, Jeff, I was in a conversation with town hall once in a conservation committee meeting. And a similar question came up and it was determined to be a zoning board issue. They don't care. I think it was a building and they said, oh, it's got nothing to do with this meeting. So, you know, citizens living here and told to go to conservation department, try to basically stop the train before it moves to figure out the answer to these things. How do we do that? This is going to move on before we can get a hearing with the conservation committee.
So, you know, this is a dialogue that I think you folks deserve, but if you're a landowner in town and you comply with the state law and the local zoning law as to how you choose to develop your property, you get to develop your property. And I think that that's pretty consistent with how most people in town would like to see people to use their own real property. To the extent that there are other problems, environmental problems, zoning problems. If there's a zoning issue, it'll come before the zoning board. If there's a conservation issue, it'll come before the conservation committee. But fundamentally, people get to use their own property in a way that is consistent with the state law. Yes, ma'am.
Susanna Tuffy, thank you. And I know we're kind of putting you in a tough spot here. And I'm really glad to know that we can go to the Conservation Committee. There are state and federal regulations around, you know, species of special concern and environmental issues. So perhaps this question is for the developer, that if you are, you know, saying that you haven't done any environmental assessment and you're willing to work with us, do we directly set up a meeting there? And we can have a conversation also about putting this before the conservation board, although I agree that I'm worried that that won't be timely, but.
So if the developer chooses to meet with you, they can meet with you. You can file whatever you want with the Concom. That's the way it is. I hear that you have literally requested to meet with the developer and they can choose to do that or not. It's private property.
If I might just add, there are mapped areas with endangered species and areas of that sort. And this project has been reviewed by the Conservation Commission. None of the development is in any of those areas. It's not within the buffer zone. It's not within the riverfront. It's not within any mapped NHESP areas. So we are in compliance with the development here.
Was there any comment from the tree warden or anybody like that?
There was no comments from the tree warden. They were part of the developmental review team.
Yeah, that was kind of point out. I know the chair knows there was a developmental team review meeting. Conservation was there, indicated there were no conservation issues. I believe the tree warden has also indicated as much. As you know, this isn't the end of our permitting process. This is the beginning.
Okay, anybody else who would like to speak their piece here, because I do want everybody to be able to feel like they have a voice. And the thing that I annoy, that I fail to do over and over again is acknowledge people who have called in on Zoom. Anybody on Zoom who would like to talk about this? All right. So what are the next steps here? Pat, what's the next thing we're doing here?
Well, if the board is comfortable with the project, I suppose, I mean, it's up to the board, but you could close the hearing and vote one way or the other on both the overall project and the waivers.
And if we were to vote on the waivers, you would suggest that we make the water line and the hydrant part of the public property pursuant to the bylaw?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, in the back of the appendix E of the planning board rules and regs, it's got the forms in there for conveyance of the easements for the water line. And they're not asking for any type of a waiver from that. So in my eyes, it's gonna become owned and maintained by the town.
Board have questions?
I don't know, did we discuss this on the last meeting on this? Did the fire department sign off on the Hammerhead driveway? They did. Yeah, we met with Captain Murray.
And if I could just speak to that as well, the fire department was fine with the hammerhead. One of the reasons why I recommended that this be a private way is that DPW doesn't really like the hammerheads when it becomes a public way. They don't like, it's difficult for them for plowing reasons. And that's why DPW was supporting that it would be a private way as well. But they did provide a swept path analysis showing that the largest fire apparatus could, go down there and turn around. So the fire department was fine with that. They just wanted the hydrant down in that area off the new main.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, I
ahead
had a
and-
quick question. I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom. I'm not seeing the button. I'm Emily Mills at 56 Surplus.
All right,
Can I ask a really, really quick question? I missed the first part of the meeting and I was just curious. I entered in on the conversation around moving the roadway. I know that there's that fire hydrant there and I was just wondering where the road is right now, like to the left, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 like huge oak trees that are probably like 3 feet at least wide. And I was wondering, like, can you at all move it just over so we like don't have to cut those down? Because those are like some of the really big ones that are also like right on the road so you can see them.
let's put that to the applicant.
Yeah, I mean, due to the proximity to the fire hydrant, it's not really feasible to move it any further to the right. We believe this is the best location. As the applicant said, he'll take care to preserve as many trees as feasible within that right of way.
And I mean, so obviously moving the hydrant would be like a large cost, I'm assuming, right? Like, is that, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have the jurisdiction to move the town fire hydrant.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I don't keep beating this down, but we did suggest a location that would preserve the older trees. It's moving the road to the right about 15 feet. It is where our personal mailbox is right now. And so we have done the homework to walk the property and to identify those trees, as Mrs. Mills has done, that would preserve the older growth trees and yet not interfere with the hydrant. And it just brings the road in slightly. It's my understanding, however, that this can be discussed by us, but there is, unless the contractor and the builders are not willing to consider an alternative location, then that's gonna be the way it is. They're gonna take down the trees that they want. And that's where the 4 housing developments that have taken place recently have no trees on them. That's the way it is.
Let me pose that question. If this is the first time the applicant has heard this, has there been any consideration of moving the roadway in such a way as to avoid these issues?
I'll let Scott address it, but there's no other way to really make it all work other than what we have. We do have a sincere interest in trying to preserve as many mature trees as we can, but we can't do what has been asked of us. Still get the road in the 2 lots and the closer one than the 3rd one.
Yeah, well said. I think this is the best possible location for this roadway.
All right, so any view on the board as to whether we should close this?
No, okay, close, just so they're aware. The board may close it, you're feel free to still contact the Comcast, this is just the planning board.
Yeah.
We're not closing this for permanent public discussion.
All right, so is anybody going to move to close the public hearing? Oh, no, I love it when the applicant has already heard that we're about to close, but wants to say something.
I just have a question.
All right.
Naming the street, is that something that the board does now before closing the hearing? I am not sure what your new practice is.
I don't know what our practice is either.
It's the responsibility of the town historian to name streets, you can propose a street name.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
May,
Yeah,
not to extend the proceedings, but I know I sense a certain degree of obviously tension. Request, for preserving large old trees really resonates with me personally. And so I believe that this is a really good opportunity to unpack that a little bit more instead of just leaving it as an undiscussed issue. So you made the assertion that you believe this 90-degree perpendicular roadway is the only way. Can you just explain the constraints or the considerations that are driving that decision so that I can understand why it's necessary that these trees be removed?
Sure. So one thing, I think I mentioned this earlier, but there's a fire hydrant right here. So moving the roadway further to the right would.
And that
pose-
fire
pose a
is owned by the
conflict.
town, not by us.
Exactly. That's an existing fire hydrant,
So
not
if
not a
the
proposed fire hydrant.
residents wanted to press this issue, they would need to apply to what, DPW? To move a fire hydrant, is that?
That's not a process I'm familiar
No, I
with.
wouldn't be asking you
unfortunately.
to do this, is coming from the residents, right?
Yeah,
So,
and then it's common practice to run the road perpendicular to existing roads.
an engineering activity.
Yeah, with this design, we're meeting all the minimum requirements for the zone. You can see we're required to provide this building circle. The way that these are angled up there, if you push this further to the right, it gets constrained. So we also need to meet the minimum land requirement on this existing lot 32.
how big is it?
The lot A is proposed at 44,185.
All right, so if you move 15 feet, it's going to be non-compliant.
Right.
So it's like I'm not an engineer, but it's a geometry problem. You just can't make it all work.
Sir,
Mr. Dennison, John Haggerty, 47 Surplus Street. We are talking about our front yard. I know where that hydrant is. We have submitted a letter to your company saying that if it was moved to the right and the location is marked by our mailbox, I know this is minutia for some of you, but we have walked the property, we have identified the old growth trees. And the place that we are suggesting that the road be moved to the right in no way interferes with the hydrant. And to say that you can't move it because of the hydrant, you're talking about my front yard. I know where the hydrant is. And it's not an issue. And what I would like to do is hope that the applicant would be willing to look at the property with members of the neighborhood to talk about an alternative that would satisfy our requirements and at the same time facilitate the building of the road in the most cost-effective way.
Does the applicant have any objection to continuing this hearing and to have the conversation that this gentleman just proposed?
Unfortunately, we do. We don't own the property, and the owner and the applicant just want to move forward with the process. We've done the engineering. I hear what the neighbors are saying. I understand what they want, but this is the way our engineers said it have to be done. We try to take all the comments from the town and from the neighbors into effect. We comply with the bylaws. That's where we're at.
How many meetings with the neighbors have you had?
So you've had three. Different groups of neighbors, we've done a peer review, water.
Was that
development.
advertised?
If I may. If I'd rather speak to the chair if I could, we've met with a group of neighbors, three different groups. I don't know the names. Mr. Stacy could address that later, but we've met with them. We've met with every board we're supposed to meet with, peer review consultant, this board twice. Conservation has weighed in. Everybody has weighed in. It's been reviewed. We've complied. We'd like to move forward. So would the property owner.
Emily, when do we have to decide on this?
Sometime in May.
Deadline is May.
So we don't have it right now, but it's either April and May, I believe it's May.
Just one more, excuse me, one more thing to consider too. So the location of the roadway, the actual paved roadway is significant. What's also significant is the grading that's required around the roadway. So it's not as if we can move it 5 feet and still preserve those trees, because you still have to deal with the grading, the fill that's going to be brought in over it. And you can't put, you can't put 3 or 4 feet of fill over an existing tree. It just won't survive.
But
It's on May 14th.
Um, Board have any further questions?
Would you be amenable to meeting with the neighbors to walk?
All right, so I'm sorry, but questions have to come through me and then I'll do it.
Would the applicant be amenable to meeting with the neighbors to look at this option?
The question is whether they would be.
we would, but we're looking closely here, and we're gonna work with the neighbors throughout the whole process. We're not starting construction tomorrow. We're just moving along in the process. We'd like to keep moving.
Ma'am?
Sorry, I'm really not trying to be aggressive, but clearly the neighbors have all been talking to each other, and although for wildlife and conservation purposes, sorry, Susanna Tuffy, 58 sets in place, this is a great amount of land. In terms of the actual neighbors around it, we have all been talking to each other, so it's clear that everyone here has a little bit of curiosity as to who he's actually met with. And I'm not trying to piss you off, sir, because I would really like to speak with you, even if we could save a couple of trees. I know that this is probably gonna happen, and we really just want to do it in the best way possible.
I'm. Any further questions? All right. What's 2 meetings from now?
March 24th.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this to March 24th and encourage the applicant to meet with whatever neighbors they choose between now and March 24th. There's a second.
We've never.
I'll second.
I guess I have to move to close the hearing first. I moved to close. No, we're continuing. All right, March 24th, you second, all in favor?
Aye.
We continue to March 24th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That information?
One minute.
Yeah.
Yes, it is in the fee.
Specifically when. Identify significant impacts for commercial health.
Yeah.
Basically, it's every month.
That's the paperwork.
I don't think that's they had a joint meeting for inspector inspection.
Well, but they get a month, right? They get. And my view was, let's give everybody a chance to speak.
Yeah, are we within our rights to request a report from Comcast?
Are we supposed to get? Don't we sometimes get a written report? I know, I think we already did. Did we get, is that in our? There's some, so in your meeting, what about public hearing?
There it is.
All their previously reviewed materials.
Received December 30th.
If not, she was at the development review team meeting too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind what about the trees. I participate in any questions, even though I'm not in the hearing.
It's all.
Sorry, you're in charge now. Let's go
Okay.
back.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Did a great job.
Thanks. Thanks for giving me the easy one.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Okay,
Trees are not mentioned in the environment.
yeah. All right, next up, MBTA community zoning.
So the state auditor determined on Friday that the MBTA Communities Act is an unfunded mandate. I circulated that to you. I circulated that to the chair of the select board. It's been suddenly circulated to everybody else. And so I think that complicates the process.
But I think Amy, did you see, I think Amy responded late in the day, basically saying that it didn't exclude us from.
Well, there's three things that I see, if I may.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
That the SJC has determined that the only recourse of the municipality is to petition for an exemption from compliance.
I think that that is.
Unless and until the legislature passes the funding to support them.
Oh, that's what they're.
And then Amy's memo said that the town could request either a temporary or a permanent exemption. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. How can we request a permanent exemption if the legislature passes the money?
So my perception of this is that we can ask for an exemption. If the legislature passes the money or actually exempts the law from the unfunded mandate, then there's nothing we can do. But my view on this has been that there was a fairly clear electoral direction on this law. And I would be very much in favor of recommending that the select board pursue an exemption. At the same time, I don't think we can stop moving unless until a court orders an exemption. But my sense of it is that there was overwhelming opposition to the MBTA community proposed bylaw.
In Duxbury or in general?
No, in Duxbury.
Okay, all right. I wanted to be clear which electorate you're talking about, okay.
No, in Duxbury. And I would be very supportive of this board recommending to the select board that they pursue an exemption. And at the same time, we have to just keep going.
I was gonna say, do you think that there's a chance that if we pursue that we're just kind of kicking the can down the road?
Yes.
All right,
Because the state can do a bunch of things, they can choose to fund our activities. They can exempt the whole thing from the unfunded mandate law. There's a whole bunch of things they can do. But given the current state of play and given what town meeting voted for as an elected person in this town, I am fully in favor of asking for an exemption.
What did Amy respond? What's her last response? Was she just giving us options?
She gave us that.
We told the select board we would need to engage Amy's firm to file a petition with the Superior Court. We could give direction for dual track, right? I mean,
Yeah, clearly we have to continue to work on compliance. So that's-
Right, I don't see how we get out of compliance or work on compliance. But it seems to me that as a board, we ought to at least recommend an application for the exemption.
Now, do you know if in that process, the town will have to substantiate the expenses?
Yes, it will.
No.
Well, yeah, and they will have to substantiate the expenses. It costs a bunch of money to have a special town meeting, right? And whether we're funded for other aspects of this analysis, I don't think anybody's funding the special town meeting. And so that becomes at least an arguable unfunded mandate. With respect to the rest of the analysis, what do you think? Are we gonna get money to do the rest of the analysis?
I had a scoping meeting today and they're gonna be back to me Wednesday.
So as we sit here today, we don't even know whether we have any money to figure this out.
Well, MHP would be funding, funding services from MAPC. But
for the original state.
MHP, yeah. But was it? Sorry, yeah, sorry, I wasn't here. I thought it was in MHP. What did MHP? They mentioned that they already gave us money. That was for, had another one.
OLC funded us the first go around. Does that mean that, so then, how, does that mean that they did in fact fund the mandate?
No, we have to do it again.
Well, the DLA
That's
cited
because of
that
us,
as,
though, right?
the DLA cited the fact that UHLC was giving communities money to get the work done. That was the year or something.
That's right.
But the law provides that they needed to provide the mechanism for the funding at the same contemporaneously when the law was passed. And that on face is the genesis for the unfunded mandate. Right, so as Lynn was saying, the legislature can go back and fix this problem.
Yes.
While our petition to the Superior Court for exemption is ongoing. And that's why we need to continue to kind of also move forward with compliance at the same time.
Well, kind of on a sidebar, is change, is that for that?
No, because we're
I don't think
paying.
anybody's brought,
So no.
well, I don't know why it would cause significant.
We have to do the same thing. We're having a special town meeting. We're hiring people.
Well, all right.
KP laws,
Okay, you lost it.
but that's cost money.
Yeah. I mean, so it's still costing us, I mean, you wanna go, if you're gonna do that, then file for that one too.
All right, so
So it seems, it was probably made, I don't think our directive from the last meeting changes. We're just adding a second directive or recommendation to the select board that they pursue a.
we can't make them do anything. All we do is recommend.
Recommend, yeah.
Right,
I mean, we're the planning board, we're supposed to plan, and I can't take town meeting's vote as anything other than we should pursue an exemption.
right, I understand that. Will it confuse the public if we say, like, we're going to go forward, but on this off chance, we're also going to do this? We're talking a little bit about keeping things kind of simple. Is it-
I just don't, I don't understand how any special town meeting where there's this notion that this is an unfunded mandate is out there, results in in an approval of a amendment to the bylaw. And frankly, I feel compelled to request the neighborhood.
I'm coming, I'm fine with that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, my concern is, because I went through this on Friday, when I learned about this in the morning.
Yeah.
I got all excited, I'm like, oh, we got a free, get out of jail free card to pass. And then you peel it back and you look into it, and what's the recourse, what do we do, what's likely to occur in an SJC hearing, how might they conclude, how many of these are they going to get? What's the legislature gonna do? There are so many barriers to this providing us any actual relief, that it seems like I don't know, it's like a false hope.
Well, the thing is, I think that there are gonna be multiple communities who are gonna ask for the same thing. And one of the real benefits of having KP Law is that they represent multiple communities. And I think the sort of cost to put together an affidavit that says this will cost us money that is unfunded is definitely, worth the effort. But ultimately, I think the people who are going to challenge this, there are going to be multiple communities, and there's going to be a cost sharing that results in a relatively small expense.
The other question I have about this, that we might explore, to surface it, is in terms of that, compiling the expenses. We can talk about what's incurred, but there's also the whole infrastructure piece. It's mentioned in the DOA letter, that right in the regulations, they say, well, the community might have to build out their wastewater infrastructure or their water service infrastructure, which is. So,
that's a huge problem
yeah,
in
so
terms of money.
can we surface that in this whole process? Yeah.
I'm sure, like Wayne said, she's probably developing. No, she won't be reinventing the wheel. She writes these for other communities.
I think she's gonna end up representing 20 or 25
Yeah.
communities.
I agree.
So I think, the message I'd like to send is that we have heard town meeting, we are still obligated to be in compliance and must work towards that, and we have chosen to shrink that to the minimum impact and the minimum effort, frankly. Even with weekly meetings, we're not putting the same level of effort into this. So that and this exemption request, it's kind of like you have to.
I am like 100% in favor of what you just said. Like, what you just said is exactly what I'd like to do.
More in parallel.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing what's necessary.
Right. Do what's necessary to comply, at the same time, try to get exemption.
Well, that too, minimum temporary.
And that said, this is the planning board, and we're in charge of determining, or at least proposing changes to the zoning bylaw. One of the questions that was asked tonight is like, does everybody in this town get zoned the same way? The answer is kind of yes.
Sure.
Right. And we ought to spend some time thinking about how we're gonna make this community more accessible to multifamily housing.
Totally agree.
I don't necessarily, and in fact, I don't think we can decide that by June.
I agree. I think that's why we go to compliant and just say like, we want to decide this, we want to have this conversation, but do it at our time, our timetable, and our terms. And I know that we're supposed to actually talk about this memo that I drafted, but for the MBTA, but do we want to pull it out now and kind of address that and kind of lock it up? So I talked to Rebecca about, instead of passing it around, it probably makes sense just trying to tackle it here, if we could add to, okay, we want to have a two-prong approach. And then go for that, and then, so I can add that more in, but did you guys have a chance to look at it and edit?
Kristen, can I just interrupt you really quick? Are you going to suggest that the select board pursue an exemption, or is that?
I'm gonna move to
Take a
suggest that.
vote on it. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, before we move on,
Okay.
let's take care of it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, no.
All right, I move for the planning board to recommend to the select board that we pursue an exemption from the MBTA Communities Act pursuant to the recent opinion of the state auditor.
We have a second?
Second,
We have any discussion of that? I will take a vote. I'll take a roll call vote. All those in favor, say aye.
aye,
Any nays, abstentions? Okay, thank you. So we have that. All right, so then we are saying we do want to take a two-pronged approach, to a four-legged table approach. So why don't we maybe just look at the memo as it is, and we can add information in, because what I tried to do is just lay out like, this is what we're trying to do, this is our recommendation, and then just as to some of the discussion that we talked about, just to provide a little bit of education and color for them. But you can see I added some questions I had for the board in italics, so maybe if we just go through. So I have to modify the two-pronged approach, so it's actually gonna be a three-pronged approach, right? First is we want to work toward paper compliance. Second is we would like to apply for an exemption. And then third would be, we would like to address this, but at a later date. Okay, so four-legged approach. Are you all comfortable with that phrasing? Four-legged approach. You want to bring the community in, or select board, planning board? Yeah, okay. All right. All right, discussion centered around these ideas. Wayne, I used your idea of paper compliance. Are we comfortable with using that phrase?
I don't know, it's not the world's greatest phrase, but.
I mean, I think people understand it, but is it too informal? I don't know.
zero impact complaint? More,
Minimal impact complaint.
Okay. Okay, all right, that might be better. Increasing the density of already developed sites, designate parcels that are the least disruptive. I think that was, identifying existing multifamily properties, look at increasing the density, identifying existing developed areas, look at changing the zoning, and engage and butters and discussions. This would create additional work for the staff. Yeah, please.
back up one, because I know it in the memo, Rebecca's comment.
Yeah.
Designating
Oh.
parcels that are least disruptive.
There was another sentence I took out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there we go. I know.
Got it, okay.
All right, so then engage in butters and discussions, like, so Emily, how much work did it take you to contact the abutters of 32?
It was just a lot of time, like, pulling envelopes and stuff,
Yeah.
a few hours.
Yeah, a few hours, that was just one property.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at 10 sites, that's a lot of extra work for you all, right? So how do we sort of mandate right there?
Yeah. Well, before we
Yeah, go ahead.
delve into the cost implications of notification, I'd like to back up and talk about
Okay.
the 10 site
Sure.
discussion, because that goes back 2 years with Chris Ryan and an initial
Yeah.
consulting engagement, which wasn't in alignment with the current strategy. So
It was initially in alignment with the current strategy. And then it veered.
the 10 sites include many greenfield developable areas, which
I-
is not.
When I joined the board, I was told we were going to designate places that were already heavily developed. And that's when I joined the board, and maybe there were things that preceded that, but then there was this turn that said, oh, something we should put boundaries in.
This is before.
This is a while ago.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to question the premise before we get too far down the
Sure,
road.
sure.
Because there are parcels in that 10 parcel list.
Yeah.
We have no interest in seeing developed, and we wouldn't propose. them.
Okay,
So
so you're
we
saying,
wouldn't need to notify it. Right.
so you're saying we should actually look at those, narrow it down.
I think so, but this is more for Rebecca, because I don't know what the constraints are.
I would say we would narrow it down, I mean, you're already going to use Island Creek, so
Right.
whoever those abutters are. And then whatever the other site is after your public engagement, right? Or would it, that would be that other site, or or two sites, maybe, I don't,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
So if we advertise a public meeting and said, these are the 10 sites that the planning board is considering and recommending. And ask everybody to show up and had a go at it. And then made decisions thereafter, at least you feel like you had a public process.
That's the plan.
yeah, that's pretty.
So then maybe we don't need to talk about butters yet. Yeah, but just recognize that potentially there is some staff work there.
So do you wanna strike that altogether?
Sure.
Yeah, is the working group started to identify those already developed parcels in addition to Island Creek?
Yes, and most of them are not on the initial consultants list of 10 sites. So not only are we probably excluding many of those, we're trying to add to that.
Okay. It seems like, was the consultant did not quite understand the directive? If he's giving us a list of 10 sites that are undeveloped and we don't want to go down that road?
I don't know how that came about.
I think it was Chris and Emily, did you and Chris work together and you found 10 sites?
Well, he found them, I just mapped them.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's the, but he was looking at sites that could be developed, so was the whole.
Yeah.
Right, so
Which is no longer the same direction we're taking.
Well, but that was not a good starting, is that a starting point though?
Yeah, like years ago.
can I ask you, Rebecca, in terms of, with MAPC, who would hopefully be the technical arm of this? How much do you anticipate engaging them in the hunting process of identifying candidates?
MAPC, I fully intend on engaging, having conference meetings and work with you.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the locus of the sort of decision.
Yeah,
Is the working group going to say, we would like you, MAPC, to look at these 6 parcels? Or are we gonna say, MAPC, look at our whole town and see what you think?
that's up to you.
Oh, I'm afraid if we go down that road.
That is up to you. I mean, I wrote down the sites that you guys talked about the other day. They didn't seem concerned with like going down those rabbit holes today during the scoping.
Good.
They just wanted to know what level of engagement that we needed them. And I said, we fully need you for the modeling of the sites. We need you to attend some of the working group meetings. And we need you to work in conjunction with CHAPA when we do the public engagement, but you won't be actually spearheading the public engagement. And it didn't seem like it was a funding issue. It seemed like they didn't say it, that they might have some staffing issues. So I kind of gathered that today.
A lot of demand, yeah.
That was why they could not give me an answer today, because they needed to kind of, find out exactly what I needed from them, we needed from them, and then go back and see if there was a staff member that had availability to assist us in the manner that we need them. So, but I've made a strong fight for the modeling of the new sites
Given the tight time constraints,
and amending the bylaw as well with Amy.
cost constraints. Doesn't it seem to make sense to give a town to provide MAPC with a certain list instead of vice versa, having MAPC come to us with a list of 10? Because if they do that, there's, I think, a strong likelihood that 5 of those, and I'm just picking arbitrary number, could be undeveloped land, and we're right back into,
Yeah,
that stalls the whole progress.
yeah, I think that's what Tad was just sort of
Is that-
asking was,
yeah.
Should they be coming to us or do we come?
We
approach them?
should-
I was
I
under
feel-
the impression we were going to them.
Yeah.
But we can tell them whatever we need them to do. And then we may go down other roads where they might look at our map as a whole and be like, hey, did you guys consider this? I mean, that's kind of, I think, what will happen during those working group meetings.
So back in May of 2023, one of the things that Chris had been working with, he was working with a consultant, JM Golds, our technical assistance provider from BAT Communities. And they came up with 3 sites, actually, just Island Creek, which was 78 acres, Summer Dogwood, which is all the way up Summer Street at Dogwood, 32 acres, and then 0 Tremont Street, which is 18 acres. And the reason for those two other sites, well, one is Island Creek's already developed, and then, Summer Street is on the Pembroke borderline.
Is that the summer congress that you guys are mentioning?
Okay, so,
Okay.
sure, Summer Congress, yes. That's adjacent to Pembroke Commercial.
And that's already developed or no?
But
Christmas tree farm.
the Christmas tree farm, there's also a strip of, there was like a dance studio, a smoothie place, a bike shop, there's a little, commercial district there.
Well, that's in the
Right, but it's
actual parcel consideration is
in Duxbury, but it's the point is that there is
local services.
local services, but also there's already commercial there. So it's not like Bonji's, whereas when Bonji goes away, there's no other commercial there, it's residential. And then 0 Tremont Street. And that at some point was considered for a 40B, so is that, I can't remember, is that the property that we're in a lawsuit with?
I think it might be.
0 Tremont Street? I don't believe that's it.
That's enterprise.
That's the same thing, right? Where's the property where we're,
On the Marshfield line.
that's the Marshville lines, yeah, Tremont/Enterprise.
Yeah, that could be the property where they engage with. I don't even know where that lawsuit stands right now.
How do we find that out?
Oh, I can ask.
Could you ask?
Yeah,
Find
pretty
out.
easily.
Okay, all right, you find out for us.
Somebody's gonna tell me the answer to that.
Okay, Paul's Kingstown Way site, which is 22 acres, Hall Corner, which is 17 acres, were taken out. Because Chris figured out that these 3 other properties would be the easiest way to be accepted.
But there's, so
That's
immediately
a different,
behind
yeah.
Brothers Market, we have high density multifamily housing. But what is that area designated as?
As far as zoning, it's the actual density.
No, I mean, what do we call that? Because that, I think it should be in the list of
Sure,
considerations.
yeah, well, it's Duxbury Village, I think is the
Yes.
current commercial name. Yeah, and that's what we discussed at the meeting last week, just to do the liaison update while we're on the topic.
Sure.
We just literally went down the list of top density sites. Number 1 is Island Creek. Number 2 is the villages at Duxbury.
The villages in Duxbury is an interesting thing because that might get built out, and if it's gonna get built out, it's gonna get built out in a very nice way over time.
Well, the discussion in the working group was the fact that, that's really kind of 2 parcels with a little connector in between. And the other parcel actually directly abuts the person who was most materially impacted by the Bonji's proposal.
Right.
So it's an even worse option. And this other point of discussion was, could we constrain the overlay district so that it does not align with the parcel boundaries? Make up an overlay and excise that portion of that. line.
Yes,
That
you
was
can.
what was discussed. Just to let you know, it was discussed.
What about,
And then just to finish, going down the list, you get right into the condos, Lincoln Street, West Street. And the other apartments on South Street. Kingstown Way, which is only a few acres. So I did a thumbnail analysis, and Rebecca and I had a little exchange about this, so I'm gonna follow up with you on that. Just, understanding the principles stated in the law and the density, and what the model reveals when you put in the details is the less than 5% margin of whether you're in the ballpark or not. You can do the rough analysis very easily. And it was apparent that with Island Creek and the village, we're there, or almost there, depending on how you draw that. That if the village is too controversial, or we don't want to go back to that neighborhood, there are other ways to cobble something together, but it involves smaller parcels and more of them.
so Ty, can you remind us, refresh us on what are the rules about having commercial on the first level? Like, say, could we take Duxbury Marketplace and Brothers and just make that
Well,
residential?
the technical feedback that we received from UHLC included the comment that if we wanted to use mixed use, we did it wrong. We needed to totally redo it. And we did it right, as far as I know. We had a consultant that did it for us. So that tells me that it's a loser. We shouldn't even touch mixed use.
Well,
I mean, the principle is good, but the.
But the town of Braintree got approval for 2/3 of its entire submission is the Grossman's Plaza.
Right.
Which is nothing but commercial, which has, quite frankly, a bunch of cross-restricted covenants that say you can't put residential out.
Oh.
But the town of Braintree got approval where 2/3 of what it designated was nothing but a shopping center.
And did they do it under mixed use or is?
They just, I don't know that,
Well, it's a question of what the current use versus how you designate the overlay.
well, they certainly it couldn't be multifamily because nobody lives there.
Oh, it could be someone.
So can't we overlay Millbrook or?
Oh, I think we could. I mean, this is where
Or Duxbury Marketplace?
I'm hopeful that because we've identified, we really need to do this quickly and with public input. That at the meeting in a couple of days, Thursday, the working group will parse this out and come up with an ABC scenario. You know, A, very few, very large, B, something in the middle, C, all over the place, little tiny. Something like that, you know, but we have to be, you know, really cognizant of how much work we're creating.
Yeah.
Because if you want to really dig down and evaluate all three of those scenarios, the smaller grain ones are gonna be a nightmare. You know,
There'll be a lot of going back and forth, even though you're only meeting once a week,
Yeah.
the time's gonna go by fast.
Yeah, and the public input thing that, you know, obviously, we learned this last time, I keep saying it. If we just come out of the gate and say, hey, we want to do this to you,
Yeah.
you're getting opposition.
Yeah.
So I think we have to finesse that somehow, and by introducing the idea as we're looking at everything. But you guys over here, you guys over here, you guys over here might want to pay attention. That sort of breaks the ice and puts everyone on notice, and we don't get this. I heard you had a public hearing. I didn't get notified. Why didn't I get a notification? And we can't do notification. No, because we don't have time. Both on the calendar and in staff.
Ours is required.
And it's not required, but they still expect it. There's an expectation.
There is. So why do we have to pick by March 19th if we're planning to do the public participation?
That's a loose date,
Okay.
you know, I just put that.
There
in
aren't many
there.
new states in that calendar.
Yeah. No, that is like probably, you know, the main dates that you have to be concerned about are May 12th and June. Or May 12th and. When did I say May?
May first.
I'm sorry, thank you, I don't have it in front of me. May 1st, the day that the bylaw needs to be finalized, and then May 12th, your public hearing. Get the groups mixed up. So I had March 19th in there just, you know, because we have to start the dialogue, start the conversations, which we have been. You know, you guys talked about it 2 weeks ago, you're talking about it again. The working group talked about it last week. We're gonna have Chava come in this week to talk public engagement strategies.
Right.
Which I think will be a really important meeting. That's all we can do, is keep going with what we have.
Well, how did we announce the meetings last time? Like, how did we get people to come
To your public hearings,
to the meetings?
well, there's required posting 7 and 14 days in advance. So where do you post it, the Clipper?
I just go look.
So that those get posted in the Clipper. I don't know. People on social media might share those postings, that would help,
Okay,
get the word out.
There doesn't seem to be any social media interest in this at all.
I'm not on social media. so
I'm just kidding.
You don't? Yeah.
Can tell by my lack of engagement with something.
So Emily,
Probably painful to read.
yeah, Emily, were you able to find out if we're able to publicly or officially have like a Facebook group for information?
Yeah, so Nancy O'Connor said that that's fine, I guess the DPW has a Facebook,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
we have to.
Oh,
fire department has a Twitter and beach has a Twitter.
yeah, I thought we were gonna get a hard no. So I think there's some possibility here, just as information, because if anybody wanted to go on to some of these conversations on Facebook and other groups, you could say, hey, you want some
I think
information?
that's a great idea.
Go here.
Okay, well, the question now is.
I'm
gonna do that.
We put it on the table, yeah, who's owning it, who's gonna visit it, who's gonna respond to it, it's a matter of being responsive.
I think Jen Turcott is the clerk.
She's like, here.
That's what you get for visiting me, oh.
I think if we had some kind of plan text, we could gather with our outreach consultant, we could kind of say like, post certain things.
Yeah, we can talk to Chatham about that. They should.
Yeah.
Well, to Rebecca's point, which you're just saying, I tend to agree. I don't think it should be a responsive forum though.
Right.
It's an information
Here's
share
information.
platform.
Yes, yes.
You can turn the comments off, and I would suggest that's how you handle that.
Keep the comments to the public.
Okay, so you're not on social media, but you know that.
Yeah.
Very good. I do. So that's what it is, like the PIO is just information, although people might be like, hey, you guys are doing a great job, and I guess we're just.
And I don't know if it's Mary McKinnon doing it or Rainey and Nancy, probably a combination of all of them, but they've done a really good job on your homepage with educating people on the override. So town meeting's coming, March 8th, and then when is your vote? 21st?
I think it's the 22nd.
So as soon as that passes, you can take the override stuff down off the homepage.
As soon as that passes,
Very good.
literally assumes facts, not evidence.
I didn't mean the vote, I meant the time.
Yeah, those dates pass.
We can replace that homepage with MBTA information.
The other thing is we have an opportunity with town meeting to actually put together an info flyer and have it there.
That's a great idea too. Oh, that's coming up.
So to kind of think
About
about
how much we'll have.
working.
That's
group.
something we should bring up with Chapa.
Yes, please.
What would be a nice,
Yeah.
just, hey, we're still here, we're still working on it. It can be basic.
We heard you.
Yeah.
We want to go in this direction. We want to comply. We want to go in this direction. Need your help. Have some decisions to make. We're gonna have meetings on these things.
Yeah,
I like that.
yes, I agree with that. It's a great idea.
Has this board been asked to comment on the override?
Not that I know of. Something. I've never seen that. I don't believe that you're allowed to say like what you think either way. You're only allowed to just share facts of it.
I'm moderating the override meeting on Wednesday.
Are you?
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good luck.
It's a public forum.
there's a public forum on Wednesday where I'm gonna be the moderator.
Where is that?
Back.
The demonstration hall we used for the.
Okay, all right. There are a lot of unanswered questions that we have here. A lot of forks in the road.
Alright,
ahead.
so. Can we defer further comment on the draft until the next meeting?
On the draft, the letter to the select board.
Yeah,
What information do you want? I think, I was thinking more that we should make sure that, you want to be more solidified here before. I'm worried about I'm concerned about the date. Letting them know about the site, that we need to do the site selection, that we're planning to do this. So what's our meeting is 10, March 10th.
so maybe we gotta get it done.
Does that make sense? I would rather take our time, but I don't really feel like we have a lot. I feel like we're under the gun here.
Well, our board, like, table strategy calls for unity amongst the planning board, select board. And working group.
I mean,
And I think we can achieve that, but we have to keep the communication.
yeah, so I mean, we can just leave it here. We can leave out, we can just be more general, just say we're compliant with the letter of the law. Just take out all of this, engage a consultant to help with public outreach. I just leave it at that. Next steps, confirm the membership. We would like to meet with them.
Yes.
Steve Gant will chair the meetings. That's MW.
When does Steve is the only person running for planning board? When does he join the board?
It's like the week after. After.
Yeah. I don't,
Is it
it's just Steve and I,
22 or 23.
Yeah.
and March 22nd, Yeah.
Week after the special.
the election, town election. I don't know how
Quickly she would be signed in at my sworn in.
I got signed in the next day.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's pretty quick.
So that brings up the point that we, I'm actually the planning board rep on the working group. Are we wanting to keep that to one, or is it good to have two members?
Oh, no.
Sure.
No, I mean, from my perspective, there's a lot of historical knowledge that would be lost if you're not there.
Yeah, I just didn't know it was a constraint. Usually we have a liaison, it's, I think at this point.
Is it
an
up to the
open
select
dialogue.
board?
Yeah, it's up to the select.
I guess that's a good point, just let them decide.
Although I strongly suggest that they take that.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think they would change. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't a reason we should say.
Well, but the issue is you'll still be on, it's whether Steve gets on.
Chair.
Well, but Steve will be on independently of you, so I don't think it's a problem.
All right, so let's just go back to this. So the bullets, why don't we just maybe stick with the one, under our discussion, comply with the letter of the law, engage a consultant, leave it at that, and take out the bottom part about the contiguous acres. The next steps would be confirm the membership, PB to meet with them, PB to meet with SB and the working group. Chairs Chief Branch to schedule meetings.
Well, it's not gonna work in February because we're almost out of February.
Yes, so then would it make sense? Again, I'm just thinking about the site selection. Would it make sense to have a mini meeting where we have 2 planning board, 2 select board, and 1 working group member? We're complying with open meeting, but we're still having a conduit. Or would you all feel more comfortable just waiting and meeting? But apparently they don't want to meet until after town meeting, right? The select board.
Correct.
You don't want to meet until with us?
They're doing double duty every week.
Oh, they're too
They're too
busy.
busy.
Yeah, so I think that, necessitates that the only option would be a smaller meeting and with liaisons coordinating.
Okay.
That should be sufficient.
I guess it would help that you are drafting this to get to them so that, they are hearing from you, even though you're not meeting with them.
Yeah.
The planning board's on our radar.
So Rebecca, do you propose that we do try to meet with a smaller group? Or,
If you can, I mean, also, I was going to ask, Chappa to come to a select board meeting as well, as part of their public engagement. I'm meeting with, the gentleman that works there tomorrow, Emily and I are both. Ahead of the working group meeting, just to clarify some things for him, and give him some background, just so that we don't have to spend all the time in the working group meeting, getting him up to speed on. What's transpired and how we got here.
thank you.
Do you want us to press to get a joint meeting after? Because we didn't solidify that, right? They just said after 20 minutes.
After, did they say the 10th? March 10th?
I think they just said after town meeting.
So it's either the 10th
Well,
or are they meeting every week these days? Or the 24th? The 24th, in theory, potentially the slides will have been selected.
well, selected, let's not use that term anymore,
well,
because we have a
Choices.
candidate sites.
Yeah.
And then we have
Considered.
an overlay district definition, and in between that is the public conversation. So when we say selected, it's already, proposed.
So then what do you think here as far as like, we're not gonna say selection, we're gonna say considerations, what do we?
Oh, well, headline isn't,
What do we want to do here?
you want to alter this calendar, I mean, this is
Sure.
discussion piece, but I think it's works.
We altered the calendar today, and we actually said, site selection, not sentence, how did we word it? We just have it as a holding place, really.
Okay.
We have it in parentheses, but
I think it just says not a hard.
not a hard deadline.
But ideally, it would have to be in place for our board meeting, like meeting,
Are you talking about the May 12th meeting?
yeah, so are we just having one?
It needs to be done way before that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
so maybe what we should be doing here is waiting to have a conversation with traffic, because
Okay.
they're the ones who say, well, you need so many weeks to prepare for this, and it's gonna
Yes.
require this much setup, so we can't
Yes.
really do this before this date,
yeah,
and that's gonna end up.
and we
driving.
added a star earlier today too, saying 2 public engagement meetings to be determined as well. That'll be somewhere in this schedule. So this is a fluid document.
okay,
Um,
but it would, so when are you meeting with Chapa?
Emily and I are gonna meet with him tomorrow, and then he's coming to the working group on Thursday.
Okay, so then, we would, it probably makes sense to meet with somebody from select board before the,
First public engagement.
well, I was thinking before the, town meeting. So we can say this is what we're planning to do, we're gonna. That's it.
Before town meeting.
Yeah.
So they don't wanna meet before town
I'm sorry,
meeting.
like a smaller group, like,
Oh, I'm
An
sorry,
update,
yeah.
maybe you call it an update instead of a meeting. Just
okay,
appear at the
Okay.
select board meeting, and say this is where we are with this, and,
Yeah, you could do that in public
just do
comment.
that,
well, not in public, it would have to be on their agenda, because we want to engage in that dialogue, answer
Okay.
any questions they have. You know,
Yeah.
this is part of the synchronizing and.
So you can be,
strategizing.
you can be on the agenda, but it needs to be after March 8th.
yeah, see, that's why, that's what I'm thinking, a smaller group, just to say, like, this is kind of our tentative plan, we'd like to meet as a whole group
Hmm,
later.
okay, and just public comment, we have to use that, I mean, that, we'll talk about it. a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, and like, yeah, and if they can't engage back and forth, but at least you could give them an update. And then, okay, so I guess, do you want me to have them have a joint meeting? The first select board meeting after town meeting then?
That would be March 10th, I think we're going to have Amy Russell and,
Jim.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's not a good day, so that'll be a
but-
long discussion.
Well, but do we just push them off 2 more weeks? Because this MBTA is a little bit more pressing.
Well, I
I mean,
so that might be on the special, that's where we want that on the special town meeting warrant as well, so.
right,
I'm afraid of messing that timeline up because we're actually like doing really well with that.
okay, let's.
What else is gonna be on the March 10th meeting? We'll just put them both on, we'll just do it both, we'll just rip the Band-Aid off. Right?
We can go to town, we can go to select board, have our meeting with them, ask them to put us first, and then we close our meeting there, and then we go and meet in the kitchen with Amy, and we have our own public meeting elsewhere in the building. We have our own.
Oh, right, because we're in 2 different buildings.
Right, so what we've done in the past is we've actually, I can't remember if we opened the meeting there. Talked with the select board and then. Did we close it, close it or suspend it, then we went into the kitchen and we finished the planning board business. I'm saying the kitchen, but the room at the end of the hall, whatever that is.
Yeah, I've been down there like once.
But,
I've been down there like once or twice.
so we could do that and just have Amy and Jim there, but the request would be that the select board put us first.
Or you could all join via Zoom from here, that's the other option,
Yeah.
but that, I guess,
That's
doesn't
not my
seem as
favorite.
much personal.
Yeah.
Personal, yeah, okay,
We're not that far away. I mean.
okay.
might be a
You
little-
could always just start your meeting at 6:30 here, or 6:45. You just start later, you could do your meeting there, drive here, because what if you have? Oh, I don't know much public.
Probably not gonna have much public for this.
We'll figure the logistics out, do you wanna just, we'll just,
So easier to do it there.
Right in the building, yeah.
Yeah.
Why
so
not?
the 10th,
March
So-
10th.
we'll request to be on the meeting on time.
Okay, but should we have a mini meeting ahead of time or just wait till the 10th?
To,
Should we have like a mini meeting with select board just to give them a heads up, or if we, if we draft this memo, send it to them?
yeah,
Say, let's
I
meet
think
on the
it
10th.
sets this, yeah,
Is there something to do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, and in this letter, did you request that you're gonna ask for, maybe we can add that?
Steps.
Right, so I'll take out all this extra fluff and it'll just end up being a one pager. Okay. That sounds good. Right. Ah, all right. Is there anything else we're going to talk about with MBTA zoning?
No, I.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Please.
When it goes to the town to vote on, can we, instead of having a yes or no vote,
Yeah.
can it be like A, B, C, D? So, and maybe 30 minutes beforehand, just an informational, like facts.
I like that because then it wouldn't be required input.
Yeah.
It would be like the ultimate engagement, right?
Yeah, I've thought about that, and the only way that that could possibly work is if the working group drafted a list of titles for warrant articles. Option A, option B, option C, and identified what's the map in option.
I was just
What's
gonna
the
say,
map
what
in
about the map?
Option C. It would be a base map, like, start with this, Island Creek. You gotta pass there. You just pass it, right? Now we get into the other part, the other half.
Mhm.
We have this option, one, too many parcels, like I said before. Another one with a handful of medium-sized parcel, another one with a whole bunch of small parcels. But we would have to put all that together right now
Yeah,
and put it out there.
that's a lot.
And then get the select board and the planning board to vote their recommendations on it.
Mhm.
And then have public conversation about those recommendations. And then maybe revise it and say, well, we decided option C is off the table. And even still, you run the risk of going to town meeting, passing option A and nothing else, and then we're not in compliance. So,
And what if it's,
That's a
you
tough-
have to pick two, A, B, C, or D? We have to pick two.
well, it's, each one is a yes or no. There is
That's what
no
I'm trying to
way,
get away from.
there's no way to escape that.
But I mean, Lauren's saying like right now our little handheld devices say one or two. Why can't they say 1, 2, 3, or 4? Can they be?
It's the nature of town meeting. It's a positive affirmative vote on a proposed
Yes.
motion.
But you know
That's
what?
all we can do.
One of the things we're talking about with the changing the zoning bylaw was saying, okay, we have two paths, A or B. All right, we've gone down, we've chosen A. Now we're gonna go here. You have path C, D. You're gonna go, we're talking about doing that. So maybe there is some way to kind of start with A, or we know A, so it's.
I
No,
fully believe we should go up or down.
okay,
One vote, yeah.
one vote,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
throw everything in.
Yeah, because we have to build the unified strategy
Okay.
to set the starting point and the direction of the discussion. We can build consensus around. So the unity, the singular vote, yes or no, starts at the beginning of the process. It's not something that happens at town meeting. It happens in weeks and months ahead of time.
I'm with you, Lauren. I like that approach.
I know, I
I
can
just
try to
don't think
scheme
it's
it out.
ever
find a
going
way.
to have a yes in this town.
The only way to really effectuate that is to do the surveys in advance and gather the
Mhm.
public input and diffuse the
Okay.
dissent and all
So
that.
do we do massive, the library's done that?
Sure, yeah, it takes a month or two to set up and then it's process.
Just use like Microsoft Monkey.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's just,
I've done it in small groups and I can do it in a week. In a small, this is a public thousands of responses. Small. package.
like that.
I like it too. It's an expense, some support, whatever. I don't know if Chapa can facilitate that. We can ask them.
That's not a question.
I think it's a great idea, just don't think it's workable.
Okay. Fine. All right. So nothing else, anything else for MBTA communities?
Well, the only other update is that the working group requested the select board to fill the 2 vacancies. Hoping maybe one would get appointed.
Are you guys, is the group okay to go forward with?
Yeah, we can proceed with 5 and then hopefully it'll stay.
And do they, how long were they appointed before they were,
Select board.
but they raised, or how did they indicate their interest?
Yeah, we went through the formal town bank, I think.
Was it a talent bank? Are there, have they, did somebody?
I think one of the, I'm not sure, but one of the people who chose not to do that is the zoning board designee. So I assume that the zoning board will get to make another designee.
Oh, a liaison. It was that, it wasn't just an open spot, it was a zoning board.
Did Bill change his mind? Because
Is Phil gonna do it?
he said that the,
Oh, if he's back in,
He's back in.
I'm good.
yep.
Because the last time I talked to Phil, he was out.
Well, that's-
All right, good.
He had time constraints towards the end. That was very short.
All right, anything else? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, quickly, can we just take a quick look at the memo that I drafted for the planning board priorities? This again is to go to the select board, just kind of letting them know what we're doing, what our plans are. And a while ago, maybe a year or so ago, we actually said we would have quarterly meetings with them. You know, go there, open our meeting, have a discussion, you know, then suspend it and then go into the kitchen and finish up our business. So I think it would be helpful to do that. I think so it sort of helps keep us front of center, front of mind, kind of holds us accountable, them accountable as we go forward. And it also gives us an opportunity to have conversations when we might need support from them. So the three top issues we agreed with would be compliance with MBTA community zoning, new Duxbury accessory dwelling bylaw, and the amended Duxbury inclusion bylaw. Is everybody good with that?
I have questions about the inclusionary.
Yeah, well,
Do we want to do that? Is that a priority for us? Do we want to have that go through with, do we want to work on that with,
It's different. As far as the
because
specifics of how it unfolds, that's.
I think, Amy was going to be working on that, right, with the ADU?
Inclusionary?
Yeah.
We haven't seen a draft. We've been hounding MAPC.
Oh, that's coming from, oh, that's right, okay.
That's a separate project that started even before I started. How long has it been going on? I honestly can't remember. I think it was when Paul was here.
Well, I think the idea was to have that go on with ADU. Do we want to continue to pursue that or just let that go?
I think, I was just talking to Emily about it before we started our meeting today about, following up again with them tomorrow.
Okay.
And
I
don't
think they were
know
trying to meet with department heads.
they had to meet with Jim. He was the last department head, but he was away. But he's been back for a while, so I think it's a good time to follow up with them again.
Okay. All right, so depending on how that goes. we can
Yeah.
just- Okay,
I think on March 10th, we can give you an update by then.
all right, thank you. And then long term, we thought, and this is in no particular order, if we want to order this, we can, comprehensive plan implementation with support from town manager and town committees, because we were looking for the town manager supposed to be, be working on an implementation table. Second thing would be recodify and revise zoning bylaws. Third is coastal resiliency. Fourth is address housing concern, raising the comprehensive plan with support from Livable Duxbury and Duxbury Affordable Housing Trust. And the last would be engaging and commuting with the community. Then the next steps, any changes or thoughts on that?
I'm just wondering about the process of the memo.
Yeah.
Is the memo subject to public comment? Is the fact that we try to determine priorities through a memo that's internal, violative of the open meeting law, which I think it might be. And I'm just wondering how the memo works.
Well, we haven't really done that. Whenever we've done memos, it's been more for things like recommendations.
This would be like correspondence.
Yeah.
This could go into their select board correspondence.
Okay, other,
Right, but my concern is, this seems to be like a substantive discussion among the planning board as to what the direction of the planning board should be. And quite frankly, I don't see a reason why that's not subject to the open meeting law.
if we're having a conversation now and we're just recording it and handing it to the select board, it's like minutes. Is that a way to look at it?
I don't know, I'm telling you, I was a little uncomfortable with the notion that we were considering this outside of the public process.
What do you think would answer that?
I think
Because we can't get on the select board agenda until March 10th.
right, but
Oh, do we have to take the step of the planning board publishing an open letter to the select board in the Clipper in order to?
no, I think all we have to do is to is to publicize in an open meeting way that we're going to consider the following, the following.
Can we post it on our website, like, like?
No,
everybody does?
no, like post it like we post every notice of public
Yeah,
meeting.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Would you feel more comfortable like that?
I, maybe I'm wrong about this. It just feels like substantive determinations are being made by the planning board. Outside of public meeting.
I don't understand how you say that. This isn't public.
Right, I mean, nobody saw this. No member of the public saw the memo.
But so it was in our meeting, it was in our meeting packet. Do members of the public see that? Do they have access?
Available.
Yeah, once that's part of the packet, it's, public record.
Is it, all right, so the public's already seen it.
It's not like posted on the website, but if they're requested, I'll get some. And it's listed, I list all the meeting materials on the end of the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you? So how do we determine if this is a substantive, because I understand what you're getting at, Wayne, and I think that it's helpful to have that. Is it better to have this in the meeting minutes as a placeholder and then to send the meeting minutes to the select board?
My concern is less about the conveyance to the select board
Okay.
as to the public ability to influence the process of determining priorities.
Okay.
That's my concern. And whether we ultimately convey that to the select board, I think that that's an easy vote. But the notion that we're going to determine select board, planning board priorities circulated among ourselves without public input is concerning to me. And maybe I'm misreading.
Yes, it's nice. But yeah.
I don't agree with you, Wayne.
Okay,
I think that you're setting goals and you're just conveying your goals to the select board. I mean, I don't know about in Duxbury, if Duxbury has select board goals, but this is kind of a similar working session that I've seen select boards in the past talk about their goals and then memorialize it on paper and.
but it's a different issue for me, whether you advertise that we're gonna talk about, for instance, planning board priorities. And then we address those priorities at a public meeting. And then they show up in the minutes, and then we send them to the select board. Then we have a planning board memo circulated solely among the planning board that purports to address the priorities.
Do we?
I think you're just calling out the priorities though, right? You're just saying that these are what you consider priorities and you just want to convey them and try to work with this. I guess,
All right, well.
maybe we're reading too far into it.
All right, people don't agree, I don't.
Yeah, I think if the memo had been discussed and debated in a private forum amongst a quorum, that would be a meeting. But beyond that, I'm not sure where your concern is.
All right.
Transparency, more about transparency. I agree with that.
Point, I'm open to hearing more. Can you? I think of it more as like memorializing our conversation and sharing it.
If that's all we're doing and it's a reflection of the minutes, let's just send it. We take minutes, we put up an agenda that says we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And if the conclusion of X, Y, and Z is reflected in the minutes and we then send it to the planning board, I'm cool with it. But it does seem to me that these draft memos reflect substantive considerations among the planning board as to their priorities that involve more than a quorum of the board and therefore violate the open meeting.
Would you feel better if we had a public hearing? We talked just.
Yes.
Okay, let's just do that. Have a public hearing at our next meeting, is we're gonna discuss our priorities and conversations in our.
So you're gonna get feedback from the public about your priorities and see if they agree with what your priorities are? Is
Yes,
that,
Nobody may show up, but at least it's been publicly noticed.
There's not enough time before the next agenda to get 2 ads and put around.
Oh.
I don't know if you
No.
need 2 ads for something like this. This isn't a zoning bylaw change.
So not really
Just
just
a
a
notice.
notice, but it has been on the agenda, hasn't it? Hasn't planning board priorities been on the press?
yeah, but the open meeting law is that, at least as I understand it, is that members of boards aren't supposed to communicate with each other about substantive issues that the board considers unless that is open to the public.
I think it is. I mean, she circulated this memo
To
right
whom?
before this meeting,
Right.
to us before the meeting. This is the first I've seen it. Have you seen it before?
No.
Have you seen it before, Matt?
No, but I
Well,
mean,
then
if
I
it's in the agenda, we could just put,
It's the,
strategize to set, for planning board setting of long and term, short and.
You have it
long-term
on
goals.
your agenda, planning board priorities. It's on the agenda.
no, I want to make sure that we materially deal with the objection that you have. If the chair is taking the initiative to set forth proposed priorities and then we discuss it in a public meeting, isn't that legit? It's nothing.
We could always.
It's super legit,
That's what
except
she
I got,
does.
I
She
got
does
a
the
memo.
minutes.
Yeah.
She-
Yeah, it kind of like indicates discussion has already occurred and this is,
I
a-
think that's in the packet as an exhibit.
What's a draft?
minutes.
it's a draft.
Yeah, I mean, if we marked up, and if somebody clicks on the agenda,
Mechanical question.
would they see this memo if it was attached to the agenda, or would they just see that?
Attached the materials, but I have a list of all of the materials at the end of the minutes. And then anyone can ask me for them.
All right, so here's put the fine point on the question. The draft memo was the input to the meeting.
Didn't you guys discuss isn't this what came about from the
I
last
mean, this
discussion?
is a result of our last
Yeah.
meeting, which is memorializing conversations that we had.
is that what is reflected in the minutes?
I believe so, yeah.
All right.
Which meeting?
Just put the format to share with.
Yeah, you can check the February 10
Yeah.
minutes and see if it.
If that's all that's reflected in the minutes, and it's in a format now to share with a select.
Yeah,
board
there's
here.
a discussion section right here. That you guys discussed it, and then this is the memo that came out of that discussion.
Yep, we're finalizing it tonight.
Right. And so I can say the goals, the planning board priorities, they said at our February 10th meeting, so I could do the same thing here on the planning board recommendation page. That makes sense? Our meetings reflect our. But to finalize this one, how do we circulate that though? Can we circulate, because we just have some edits here?
You're gonna edit on here, so I guess you guys would take a vote that you're okay with this memo. And then we would send it to the select board as correspondence.
With the edits.
Yeah, as amended, and
As
then the
amended
question
with
would
the
be,
edits, yeah.
do we get a look at it before it goes to the select board, just to make sure it's.
You can vote to have Kristen or you or someone in the group. Take a final look at it, or Emily and I could do it, or I mean, however. It's up to you. You didn't do anything. I
Yeah,
mean,
so much.
it's in your minutes that you already discussed this, and then.
Then Emily, our minutes are online, right?
Yep. After they're approved.
Where are you coming with that?
We can proceed in whatever way the chair prefers.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're in compliance across the board.
I don't know that we're not. I have significant concerns. I can't tell you that we're in compliance and not in compliance. The notion that we are going to circulate a memo among the members of the planning board that the public hasn't seen and discuss it is concerning to me.
But your packets are never posted ahead of time, and it's not a requirement.
Well, but it's a requirement for the planning board or members of boards that constitute a quorum that make substantive decisions to make those decisions in a public forum.
At the last meeting, you did though.
Okay, if that's all that memo memorializes, great.
You want me to get an opinion, maybe?
Doesn't, we can fix it immediately by just posting a memo.
We can do that too. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, I mean.
I don't,
I'm down for
I'm just concerned, I don't. For example, when the auditors thing came out. I said to Kristen. I didn't send it to the rest of the board, because I didn't want to have a substantive discussion
Right.
about the auditors thing.
Right.
Then there was a broader email from Emily that sent around what the town council had said, which was now subject to the entire view of the public. But I was concerned that I did not send that auditor's letter to a quorum of the board. Because I don't think that those kind of discussions are appropriate under the open meeting law.
But as long as the board doesn't respond, you're allowed to send correspondence to each, like, you just can't go back and forth, I always was under the impression, you can.
Well, you're right, you can't go back. But the notion you send it to 5 people and nobody responds is unlikely.
Well,
Well, everyone's trained to not respond though.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I could easily be wrong here. I'm just expressing my concern.
and I think that'd be just a,
Do you want us to post this? I mean, you can do whatever makes you feel comfortable.
I wonder if maybe it would be helpful, who do we go to for open meeting law questions, is it Amy too?
Yeah. Maybe Jeff Blake, yeah.
Or just like,
No, it's gonna be, Jeff's gonna push it down.
oh,
Well, those are our councils, so.
Yeah, but Jeff is gonna give it to him.
would you just ask David, just if we want to just do this memorialized conversation, just kind of provide information. We need to have public comments, public meetings, we'd be happy to do that. In the future. When are the boards, like, how do you communicate with the select board?
I literally don't communicate with the select board other than I will place a call to Mike McGee.
Yeah.
Individual, or I will call Amy McFadden, individual.
But you're not setting policy, you're making.
Right.
Yes, okay. That's a little different. All right, we'll hold off on the memos till we hear back from Amy. In the meantime, I'll edit them, get them over to, so in the off chance, should we make a motion to, if council approves of this, should we still have a motion to go ahead that we would send this, or is this just an administrative thing we need to do? Do you need to vote on this? For any reason?
Well, you would vote that if this quote, well, you wanna wait for an opinion, or you would, I guess you could say pending opinion. Are you happy with the memo as written
With a few edits.
with the edits? So I guess you could vote with the edits. Pending legal
Okay.
counsel's decision or
Do we
opinion,
just wait till the next meeting?
That's the
or
town,
you can,
right?
Right.
Then hopefully we'll be at the board meeting. I kind of wanted to give them a heads up. So, you just pick up the phone and you just talk to Mike McGee.
Right,
That's gonna be low on their list, whereas if they get a piece of paper, then they might.
but our 10th joint meeting is, we're focused on the MBTA, right? Yeah, okay.
So those are the things.
and 80 and 80. So they don't have 80. To you. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in waiting. But it's up to the board,
Waiting for,
the opinion.
do we have a option guys for that? Does anybody want to make a motion for anything? Yeah.
You don't have to, you just take no,
Take no action as to the move, as to the memo,
do
to
anything.
receipt of legal
I'd
opinion.
like to move to it, sir.
Yeah. that's
yeah,
it.
I mean, unless it's a substantive act.
Yeah, I don't-
Sending a memo.
Okay, all right, I don't think so either, but I want to make sure, Wayne, that you're comfortable.
No,
I looked
it's,
at more,
this is,
so I can
can't
memorialize.
be about me. I'm 100% sensitive to the open meeting.
And I appreciate that, I think it educates us and keeps us
Well, and because,
properly engaged.
this is a public process where not everybody pays attention all the time.
Yeah, okay.
but when they do pay attention, I want them to have an opportunity to do something about it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we just have one more thing on the agenda, and that is committee liaison reports we've heard from MBTA's. I just wanted to give you a heads up about the zoning bylaw revision. And that is that, we are waiting for general code to send us their updated preliminary draft using a red line zoning bylaw. So we expect to have that within 100 days after January 27th. So we're thinking like end of March, maybe, end of March, end of April.
And that's
Just.
a recodification of the
Yes.
rules.
Yes, so they figure that once, my understanding is that once that's in place, it really feels like they can go over. Or maybe there's some other things.
All right. I can give you an update on the Hall's Corner working group.
Yes.
We have directed the consultant to try to come up with a plan that does not require a large number of, or large loss of parking spaces, but still provides for reasonable pedestrian, safety. The plans that the consultant initially came up with resulted in, what the working group considered way too many, losses of parking spaces. Because there are businesses there and it is one of the few business districts in the town. And people should be able to park. But that's where we're at, and we should see a new revision sometime in the near term.
Nothing on the bike side. We haven't met again.
Okay, yeah.
Housing, Affordable Housing Trust received approval of the housing production plan from EOHLC today.
Nice.
And I'm working with Dan to encourage the select board to appoint an implementation committee task force for that. You know, that's gonna, wait.
Yes.
And they're talking about RFPs for East Street and Wall Street. Optimistic that the Zero Kingstown Way property case will be resolved in the township.
And do you know anything about that? Wade said he would check into it. Do you know anything?
I didn't figure that out. It's been around a while.
Yeah.
Strange case.
But it's supposedly the deadline is coming, right up. It should be
Oh,
released from the
imminent.
courts.
Okay, great, thanks. Lauren, anything to share?
I wasn't able to attend the meeting last week, I was away.
Right. But you love it when they have those meetings scheduled that same week.
Yeah.
Like any other week. Okay, anything else, anybody? Who's sharing?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Second, I think there are a couple seconds. All right, thank you, everybody.